And the question is, are the tariffs sort of a short-term blip, or is this part of a longer-term strategic shift by the West? And while President Trump is often kind of out in the weeds, his thinking here, I don't think, is as off base relative to other Western leaders as a lot of people might think. There's been a lot of the perception 30 years ago was if we give preferential trade terms to China, that'll spur the economy, which will in turn spur the development of democracy and a more pro-Western stance. That hasn't actually happened. So I think you're seeing a shift in Western thinking as to whether it even makes sense to give China preferential trade access. So we'll see. If this is the start of something longer term, that's very problematic.
But Charles, one question that investors have to be asking, especially after overnight and over the weekend, is how much ammunition does China have? President Xi says they have unwavering support, the private sector. They've got a so-called plunge protection team to make sure the stock market doesn't fall too hard. Every regulator is working on easing policy and trying to paper over some of the problems. So is all of this going to work, and should investors have some psychological comfort from the fact that they are on top of it in a big way?
Well, you have to ask yourself the question, do you want to invest in a market where the government feels like they have to get on TV to make people feel confident? That, to me, is a sign of desperation. And when you look at the numbers, now, of course, Chinese economic numbers are notoriously unreliable. But the general consensus has been that you need economic growth of about 6.5% in order to actually increase employment. Well, we're at that level now, and it's going the wrong direction. It's decelerating.
I guess I would just answer that. Sorry to cut you off, but we've seen that in the U.S. during the height of the financial crisis, during the height of the European debt crisis, when Mario Draghi came out and said he'll do whatever it takes. I mean, that's what leaders do to try to calm fears during crises. I don't think that's unique to China.
It's not unique to China, of course not. But when you do see sort of anecdote, with China, with any market, you do have to look at anecdotal clues before it really becomes reflected in the published data. And when you see angry mobs protesting falling property prices, that's very problematic. Whatever confidence the government's looking to instill, they really have a big hill to climb here when you have homeowners rioting over falling home prices. That shows a big lack of confidence. So, I mean, in the short term, I think it gets really murky. Now, the biggest up days tend to be during bear markets and during corrections. That's every stock market. The bigger down days, the biggest up days all tend to happen when stocks are in correction. So is today's move just one of those big up days in a broader correction? We'll see, but I wouldn't put too much faith in one day's price action.